Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guest we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you do follow this podcast so you don't miss any of our future episodes. I'm delighted today to be joined by Simon Nichols, CEO and founder at Thrive. So welcome back, Simon.
Again, thank you for having me, Craig. It doesn't seem very long since the last of these were recorded, so really great to be back.
It certainly doesn't. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing all or nothing thinking and how we perhaps can regulate our thought processes. And we'll take a look at some strategies that you can employ in your everyday life to avoid that all or nothing approach to experiences and change. Just before we get into that, and sticking with the theme of all or nothing, what skill would you like to go all in to learn?
I would like, and I have tried to learn it, but I would like to have that ability to pick up a guitar and play any song that I can listen to. My stepson Adam has this ability. He can listen to the chords, know what the chords are, and then play that song. He can listen, can feel the music. I would love to have that. I have zero musical bones in my body. The 4 attempts I think I've had at trying to learn the guitar have all ended in my own tears. But I think if I could just switch on a skill overnight, it would be that I'll just pick that up, listen to that bit of music and play that bit of music back. That would be my one skill I could master.
That's amazing, because with me it would be the piano, playing the piano. I'm amazed at people when they can just play the piano, just sit down, and the way the fingers move across those keys. I just find it mesmerizing. Yeah.
Can we? Is there a future imaginary band that you and I can put together? And one that we won't actually do, but
An imaginary band, yeah, we can go for that, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, right now, all I can see is the sellout concerts.
Yeah.
Do you know what? You rocked tonight, I can tell you.
That will need to stay in the imaginary space. But just moving on now to reality, if we can. Could you give us an overview, Simon, of what all or nothing thinking is and perhaps how it affects us directly?
Well, I just gave you a good description of a very positive all thinking, which is the belief that we have sold sellout concerts around the world. But what you very kindly, without calling me delusional, was you asked me to come back into reality. And ironically, what we're going to be talking today about is cognitive distortion. Cognitive distortion, or you very eloquently described it as all or nothing thinking. It does exactly what it says on the tin. Cognitive means brains thinking. Distortion means something different from what we're actually seeing or understanding. What is cognitive distortion? I can already preempt your next question there. So when we think about cognitive distortions, what we're thinking about, for the most part, are sometimes negative, if people listen to the previous episode, but sometimes irrational, and in many cases inaccurate thinking. So what cognitive distortion allows us to do, and are really common. Cognitive distortions can happen at any time. We're talking about one of maybe 11 that are, at least have a name. And we talked about one last episode, which was negative thinking, negative bias. Cognitive distortion, again, encompasses some of that negativity. But when we're thinking as a specific around all or nothing, what we're really talking about is we have, there are many different names that we'll talk about later, but the all or nothing thinking is, it's either going to be one way or another way. It's absolute. Okay, there's no middle ground. I'm just trying to sort of put this into a situation. You're going to have chocolate ice cream, or you're going to have strawberry ice cream. You're not going to entertain vanilla. You're not going to entertain a bit of chocolate, a bit of strawberry. Your all or nothing does exactly what it says on the tin.
No
It's
Neapolitan.
No, oh, Neapolitan does not exist in the cognitive distorted state of all or nothing thinking, I'm afraid. Unless, of course, it's only Neapolitan and no other ice cream. So you can start to see where it's something's going to happen or isn't. So all or nothing thinking really, how it impacts us is we perceive that something's going to happen, and it will happen or it won't. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what the impact of that is going to have on us as humans, because it's quite impactful for a lot of people.
Okay, so if I kind of think about this, so in this day and age of instantivity, if that's even a word, to be honest, where we're always switched on, we've always got the mobile. Some people have it just welded to the palm permanently. So an example for that, they didn't reply to my message right away. They must hate me. Is that what we're talking about here? That kind of thing?
That's exactly it. There's also a level of perfectionism that comes into play as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And it's how you react to the single thought process that you've conjured up, that you've told yourself, that you've storytelled to yourself. And we are not by any way meaning that your thoughts are made up. That's not exactly it. But how you feel about those thoughts, how you feel about that lack of information, and what that does to you, how that impacts your self-esteem, how that gives you a negative viewpoint on something, because you've only got here we go. Another word for all or nothing thinking is binary thinking. It's on and it's off. And we should have used that straight from the off. We're in the world of IT, with SAP runs on IT. So, it runs on binary questions. It's yes or no. And that's really where we go with cognitive distortion. There is a thought process based on the reason why Craig has not got back to me is because he's busy or he hates me. It's not anywhere in between. How do I find out what it is? I have to ask you.
Thank you. And just going back to that, because I was thinking, okay, what is all or nothing? And I'm thinking, okay, black, white, no areas of grey. And as you said, you eloquently put it as cognitive distortion. You also then mentioned binary thinking, which is very near my black and white area. So what kind of perhaps other names might there be that listeners may understand this?
Well, there is. I mean, obviously, black and white thinking is one of the main names for it. The reason, again, black and white, we've evolved into a racial element as well. So we try not to use black and white thinking because there is a distinct difference, and it doesn't say whether black's right or white's good. But again, it's in the world. We could also use dichotomous. Dichotomous. D-I-C-H.
Some words coming out in this podcast.
They are dichotomous thinking, dichotomous, is viewing either things as good or bad, successful or failure. So it's that I think it comes from the dichotomy anyway, but it's that perception that there's only two things, good and evil. Okay, there's nothing in between. You can also, as I say, all or nothing thinking is another way, but it all boils down and under this umbrella of this cognitive distortion. It's thinking a perception of something is going to happen, and that's where that self-perfectionism comes in as well, because we often apply very high standards to that all or nothing thinking. I've got to get the best presentation out. And if I don't get the best presentation out, if I don't get all of the dots and I'm using my own analogy here, if I don't get all the commas right in an email, I don't send the email. I will go back and I'll go, oh, I missed a comma out on the 7th paragraph. Oh, what a load of rubbish that email was. And I've had those thoughts before. I can counter them, but it's focusing in again, focusing in on something that actually then obliterates everything else that's good.
So it sounds, reflecting back on some of our previous discussions around negativity and a recent one on negativity bias that we discussed, I'm feeling like this may actually amplify negative emotions. So are there any common reactions or behaviors resulting from that all or nothing thinking that you can highlight?
Well, let's go for the scenario. It's the situation is good or bad. Okay, 5 times out of 6, the situation is bad because we're 5 to 1 dealing. So for most people, the situation is always bad. And now we'll get to half full and half empty glasses a little bit later. But what impacts us if we think everything is either good or everything is bad? There's no grey areas. There's no, and typically from cognitive distortion, and when we think about the good and evil side of the coin, is it's very difficult for you to change your mind, because your thoughts are telling you that it's all good or it's all bad. So what happens? Well, negative emotions, that's the main one that we've talked about there. So what that does is that can trigger anxiety, that can trigger depression. You're only focusing on the bad things. You're only focusing on negative aspects of something, a situation. Because of that constant negative thought process, it's always going to be bad. If you didn't have anxiety or depression, the constant pressure to be perfect, to have that perfection in your life, to make everything great, could actually bring on a latent set of anxiety, make you thinking about things even more. You start to feel hopeless. You start to feel like there's it will always have a negative outcome. So ergo, why do I even need to bother to change? And we'll talk about a scenario a little bit like that I went through with my daughter, actually, about that feelings of hopelessness, burnout as well. So you think all of this time just sort of not being the perfect person, that everything's going to be wrong, everything's going to wrong, especially in work scenarios. You overwhelm. Your self-confidence dips, your self-esteem dips. So you can just think, just by having a a good or evil thinking process, all or nothing, can actually be detrimental to your health. And how does that show? How does that demonstrate itself in the workplace? Well, you might avoid things. So you might avoid a task, you might avoid a conversation because you know how bad it's going to go already. You've already thought it through. It's going to end terribly. I'm not going to have that conversation in the first place. Impact on your relationships, work relationships, home relationships. It might be you might have difficulty setting goals, setting yourself a design for the future, and actually it can impact you impulsively as well. So what might happen is you might suddenly have this thought process, and you've eaten healthily for 2 weeks, and you suddenly have a pizza. I might as well give up eating healthily now because I've had a pizza. So it's that sort of scenario, and it's all or nothing thinking is really related to perfectionism. Perfectionism and control, and we'll talk a little bit about both of those a little bit later. But from a behavior perspective, you will notice it. And that's when you need to think about, am I putting everything in the, let's talk a matrix analogy. Am I taking the blue pill or the red pill? Which way do I want to, how do I want to start feeling better about myself?
Thanks.
We know our community, but we don't know yours yet. Why not share the benefits of your UKI Sub membership with those who don't know about us? The UKI Sub referral scheme rewards you for helping to grow and develop our community. You can check out the link in the description to find out more about how you can get involved. Terms and conditions apply. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
So you mentioned perfectionism quite a lot there as factors that I suppose can contribute to that all or nothing thinking. Are there any other factors that can contribute to it that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so there might be a genuine medical reasons, mental health conditions, cognitive distortions, very, very common, sit under anxiety disorders, generalized anxiety disorders, PTSD. So it could be a diagnosed mental or an undiagnosed mental ill health condition that could be causing that. It also could be the lack of control. And what we're talking about there is that something is out of my control. And you may have heard of I think we've talked about it before. Something that helps control is stoicism, to think not of the thing that's impacting you, but to think of the wider picture and not to focus on a particular thing. The lack of control is obviously the opposite of stoicism. It's the everything out of my life is in control, or I'm being controlled as well. So when we think about certain sort of mental ill health behaviours such as self-harm, a lot of that is brought back into a desire for control because everything else in my world has gone out of control. And when I'm out of control and spiraling, and we talk about impulsivity, I am now thinking desperately. And desperate thinking tends to be black and white, tends to be all or nothing. So we can see that certain mental health conditions, as well as something's gone wrong in your life, you may have been told you're going to be made redundant. You now have no control over your continued work experience, your continued work at that thing. Now have no control over your finances coming in. You have no control over the bank repossessing your house. Whoa, bum, 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 bum. And then you've just by having that one letter of you being made redundant, you're now homeless and your wife has left you and your children have gone. And that's your thoughts going, right, it's not I'm going to be able to find a new job and we're going to be able to keep the house and we're going to be able to do it and we're going to move and it's going to be a better experience and everyone's going to be lovely. And because that's positive thinking. All or nothing cognitive distortions tend to catastrophize and tend to go down a darker, bleaker route, which means that actually as a direct result of something happening here, this will absolutely happen. 9 times out of 10, you will need some support in those thoughts and feelings to actually reframe or remaneuver that distortion to be a more positive distortion.
And I think sometimes it's getting that help to understand that, you mentioned 9 times out of 10 there. I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, that thing doesn't actually happen. It's fearing the worst, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, yeah. And you think, and we use the analogy of a pay rise. Okay, so a wonderful member of the SAP user group team walks into your office and says, Craig, look, I've delivered this project on time. I've been consistently fantastic. I'd really like a pay rise. I think I'm worth it. Here's my business case I've put to it. And you've gone, no, afraid not. Not this year, sorry. That person leaves. They will never come back and ask for a pay rise because you said no. Now, what you didn't say was this year ends in July and next year is in August and we've got pay reviews coming up because you were too busy, because you were thinking about something else and, you've got a meeting you need to get to. So you didn't do that reassurance. But that person will never come. And you think, they'll come back and ask that. They won't, because you've put your thought process into play is that, well, that they'll come back next month when we're doing the pay reviews. And that person's gone, I'm never going to go through that humiliation again. I can't believe that Craig doesn't think this about me and I'm never going to get a pay rise. I might as well leave. And all of that from a one sort of perception of you understanding someone else's thoughts, which we never do. And yeah, you when we recognise that, and the pay rise is really, and I always ask this on the courses, and you go around the room, no one asks for pay rises, because one time they were told they couldn't have it, or maybe they've already had that conversation in their head, and their head is going to be no. But
I'm
you
going to
don't,
check the
never
building for
truly
cameras
know.
now. Just so on that, you mentioned that situation there. Are there any other, I suppose, situations that we're more likely to perhaps experience all or nothing thinking?
Yeah, it's having difficult conversations, and having conversations where you already perceive the outcome of those conversations. So, a member of your team, you might have to talk to them maybe about their body odor. It's going to be a very difficult conversation. They're going to get upset. You're going to feel bad about it. But everyone else in the office is, going to talk to you about it. And actually, I won't have the conversation because I don't want to see them cry. I'll probably then cry, and I'll just leave out a bottle of deodorant for them because they'll get the message, because they'll see the deodorant and they realise they smell, and wow, I've just fixed it. What a great, that conversation went really well. Fantastic. Dave comes in next week and the bottle of deodorant's in the bin. Oh. So you've already had the conversation, you've already responded, the person has already answered, he's got really sad and upset, and bang, bang, bang. So I might as well not have that conversation in the first place. So the going back to my daughter, she was 16 and she was working in I don't know how many garden centres listen to this, Craig, so I'm going to say Dobbies. There are other garden centres available, but we're not choosing Dobbies over any other. But Jess was working in Dobbies and she was working on the food counter, and she came home a couple of times. She said, "I'm really sad, Dad. I'd love to get on the tills." I said, "Well, why don't you ask them? They'll say no." I said, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, no." They've said no. I asked them when I started and they said no. So they're always going to say no. And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Why don't you just do me a favour?" I said, "Next time you go in, just walk up to the supervisor and just say, 'Is there any chance I can go on the tills?'" She came home after the next shift. She said, "Oh, I'm on the tills next week." The time that she'd asked, they had too many people on the tills. People had left and they didn't realise that she wanted to go on the tills. So she had to overcome that it will always be that way in order to get something that she actually wanted. But in her head, they were always saying no, and they always will say no, so I might as well not ask because I can't face the disappointment.
Interesting, that, isn't it? And you've mentioned the workplace as well, and it just got me thinking about that. So, for instance, we're in a meeting or whatever, and somebody disagrees with an idea or whatever. We can take these things personally. I suppose that's kind of an all or nothing piece, isn't it? They don't like that, so they don't like me, so they're against me.
Yeah, we talk about the spiral of thought, and it's a continuous journey through your thoughts, feelings, and emotions and actions. So you think that something, you think that conversation went really well. That makes you feel sad. It makes you want to cry. It makes you feel upset. That then means you don't go into the office. You don't go and speak to that person and that meeting, which means you then start to take time off of work. And that time off of work makes you feel sad and makes you feel isolated, and it makes you cry, and it makes you, and so on and so forth. And so you're in a cycle, and that's when you notice that cycle and that cognitive distortion is happening all the time. That's when you need to do something about it. And that's why I talked about the support, because you've got to break the cycle. You've got to break that pattern of cognitive distortion. And that's where it becomes a bit tougher.
So let's look at that now if we can. Are there strategies people can employ to regulate their thought processes perhaps and find a middle ground, those grey areas? Because I think most of life is lived in the grey rather than the black or the white.
Well, if you've noticed that you're in it a lot, the first thing we always say, go and get immediate sort of support And we're talking professional support here. A lot of cognitive distortion, a lot of all or nothing thinking will potentially need cognitive behavior therapy. It will need you to break one of those cycles, the sadness, the way that you feel, the impact, the action, the thought process. You need to break one of those, which will then free up the other elements and allow you to think in that middle ground. But in order for you to go and seek professional help, whether that be a psychiatrist, a GP, a work program, an employee assistance program, you've got to recognize the pattern again. We're going back to that, recognizing the pattern. Are you aware that you are having conversations with yourself that are always ending in a negative outcome? So much so that you don't go and speak to someone, you don't go and do something, you don't do that dog walk because you once met a different dog, you're avoiding something. So once you recognize that pattern, and this is really how cognitive behavior therapy starts to work, it's identifying those grey areas. Will it always happen? Will you always meet that dog on that dog walk? Well, probably not. It might be there, yes, okay, but it may not be always there. Yes, okay. What about if you went early? What time of day was it you went and you met that dog? Well, it was morning. Could you go in an evening? Because it might not be there. Okay, well, if it's, you're right, it might not be there. So what you start to do is you identify that middle ground. You then challenge that negative. So you question the validity of that thought. Why do I always believe that I'm going to meet that dog on the dog walk? Well, because it only happened once. Why am I thinking like that? So then you start to recognize how unhelpful that continual negative thought is. And then we bring our old friend mindfulness back in, because actually not projecting on what might happen or what has happened, you start projecting on the as is, the here and now. And what that does is that starts to free up that cycle of negative thoughts, of being back in control. Because while I'm just doing black and white, all or nothing, good or evil, I'm not living. I'm not having something in the middle. People will be asking me questions and I have only got two answers, when actually there could be a whole multitude of answers that I can give them. So yeah, it's really around how you identify, recognize, put something in place, and then potentially, if what me and Craig have been talking about, you identify very strongly with you, probably worth going and get some professional support.
Okay, thanks. So if I'll come back to that in a moment, if I may. So if I just kind of go back to what I mentioned earlier, the scenario in a meeting, somebody didn't like my idea. So it's almost like, rather than they didn't like my idea, okay, they had concerns, that's useful feedback. How can I amend it to make it come across better? Is that the kind of thing?
It's exactly that. It's again, it's going back to reframing. So it's saying, right, they shot my idea down in flames. Okay, was there anyone else in the meeting room? Was there fundamental flaws to my idea? Not all ideas are great ideas. I think we should all have Ferraris. Yes, no, Craig, it's not happening. Just the board members. No, Craig, we can't all have Ferraris. So, that you need to get some external validation. So maybe talk to some of the other people, or maybe go and have a conversation with that person directly involved. Why did you feel that need to say that my ideas were bad in that meeting? Was it because they were bad, or is there something that we need to sort out? Again, difficult conversations, tough to have, but you're on the right path at that point. You're stepping towards if you can have that sort of confrontation. But what you might want to do is to seek validation from other people within the meeting, or actually then relook at your idea and take yourself out of storyteller mode. Because if you think about it, everything that we're thinking about is our stories that we're telling ourselves. We are making things up based on what we think and feel. And again, not that it's fantasy, but you might say something and I'm like, oh. I tell myself a story. How do I understand whether the story I'm telling me is relevant, or how can I change that story? And you can only do that by seeking that support of that individual or asking for more information. So you can then, and both of you, because there must be a middle ground. I don't like your idea, I do. Is there somewhere in the middle that we can meet?
Compromise. Life's always about compromise. And just going back then, you mentioned professional help, support. So are there any external support networks that you could recommend to people who perhaps have identified they're struggling with all or nothing thinking?
It's not so much as so lots of self-help elements out there, journaling. There are some online cognitive behavior sort of identification guides as well that people can use. If you just do cognitive behavior therapy, there are lots and lots of great information out there. Again, if you want to go down that therapy route, your best bet would be your GP surgery. And if you have an employee assistance program, go through the employee assistance program. But again, it's it's noticing, identifying, and this is maybe something you want to do yourself when you think about a journaling or bulletin. So you put down your thoughts, and you might have done this before, the pros and cons. What are the good things that I'm thinking about this, and what are the bad things? Why is this impacting me in such a way? Why am I always being drawn into this battle of wits with this particular employee? Put down your thoughts on paper. Maybe talk to someone else about, do you feel the same when you speak to such and such? No, I think I get on really well with them. There's not that interaction there, right? Well, okay, so how do you think I should start being? Because again, it might not be the other person's problem or intention. It might be your perception of it. So again, writing stuff down, journaling, bulletin, just sort of seeing it written down in paper in front of you might give you a bit of an insight as to why things are happening. And then again, making a list of the things that actually make you feel better. Do I need to leave the organisation because the person that this is happening with all the time is my manager, or do I need to say something? Do I need to report anything? Or actually, is there something I need to work on myself? And again, you gaining back that control, gaining back that certainty, understanding why you might be thinking that way in the first place. Why is it that you demand perfectionism from yourself? Why is it that all of your PowerPoints have to be 100% amazing and incredible? Are you being too demanding on yourself as well? So a lot of introspection. And then go and get that professional support if you think it's going to be of value to you.
Thanks for that, Simon. And just as we come to a close now, is there anything perhaps we haven't discussed, or is there one thing that you'd like listeners to take away from this discussion?
The one thing I think, well there's many actually. There's we could have gone down catastrophizing, overgeneralization, mental filtering, lots of podcasts to come. But what you have to think about is that these are thinking traps. They are laid there for the unwary, and as you're wending your way through life, you've got to avoid falling into these thinking traps, these overthinking, these generalizations, these ways of making you feel the way that you feel. So once you can identify that you're feeling like that, you can then avoid those situations or those locations where you might experience these thinking traps, where you might acknowledge that not everything is going to be the worst it can possibly be. The fact that you had different shoes on for that TEDx talk is frustrating you, and you'll always see it, you'll always notice it. How do I break that cycle? So think of them as thinking traps, and then think of ways that you can avoid falling into them.
Simon, thank you. Really do appreciate your time and your insights. Thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. And just on one final note, Simon didn't wear shoes for his TEDx talk. He did them in his socks. But please make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay balanced.